Thank you for tuning in to the Into the Classroom series produced by Mental Health California, sponsored by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative.
Welcome to Into the Classroom, which is a student mental health awareness multimedia series produced by Mental Health California. I'm your host, Conrad Crump, affectionately known as Coach Crump, and today's topic is understanding youth depression and healing solutions for today's students. Now, high school and college students who experience depression face significant challenges that can impact their well-being and academic success. Understanding the prevalence, origins, and available help for youth depression is crucial in creating a supportive environment for young people. Today, we'll discuss youth depression and the role schools, parents, and caregivers play in providing mental health support and promoting inclusive environments. We'll also hear from youth who may have experienced depression themselves and find out some of their unique ways of overcoming these challenges. Now, before we get into everything, I'd actually like to welcome Mr. Christian Jacobs to the conversation. Now, Christian is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a leading Brother Be Well clinical advisor. Christian is also an amazing therapist who has extensive expertise in substance use prevention. Now, his depth of knowledge benefits youth and their families throughout California. Christian, my man, what is up? So glad to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing good, sir. How goes it?
Oh, man, fantastic. Great now that you're here. Now, I'd actually like to take the time to introduce some of our youth guests as well. I'd like to introduce Keyshawn Williams, who is a recent graduate of Sacramento State University. Welcome, Keyshawn.
How you doing, Coach? Good to see you.
I'm doing great, man. Good to see you as well. And we also have with us Joel Suazo from Los Angeles City College. What's up, Joel?
What's up, everybody?
Hey, glad to have you. And we also have with us Monica Tamayo, who is a student at UCLA. Hey there, Monica. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Good. And last but not least, we have with us Michael Betlak, a student at Sacramento State University. How's it going, Michael?
What's going on, Coach Crump?
Hey, man, I'm glad all of us are here, and this is a very important conversation. So at this time, I don't want to waste any more time. Christian, I'd like to turn it over to you and see if you can just give us some insights into youth depression and the supports that are available for them today.
Yeah, so youth depression is tricky because, well, first let me talk about what depression is. For anyone who doesn't know, it's really when someone's experiencing for at least 2 weeks a lower level of a lack of motivation doing things. So, versus basically, not finding pleasure in the things they used to do, going up and basketball or, hanging out with their friends. They find like a time where they're not really themselves, So and that could last for at least 2 weeks long. And they may change the way they eat in terms of their diet. Maybe they're not hungry anymore. Maybe they're losing weight or they're gaining some weight. And they have these, and mentally, it's like a sign of like when they have this hopelessness, right? So nothing's right. Nothing's ever going to be right. The sadness, and which can sometimes turn into suicidal thoughts. So that's a general overview of what depression is, like on a clinical level. Really, and one thing about depression in youth is that it looks different in boys and girls and men and women. The best way to see it is that a lot of times in men, especially in boys, it kind of shows up as like, it could be like a grumpiness, so people kind of misdiagnose or miss it because they seem more grumpy than sad. So that's one thing about depression when it comes to men and women. Sometimes it's really missed in that area. And it's really connected to a lot of other things. So there's different levels of depression. So sometimes people are really severely depressed. Sometimes people are moderately depressed. And it really depends in terms of the range of what's going on and what type of symptoms they're showing. But there's also a range in depression as well.
Wow, thanks a lot for that breakdown, Christian. That was super informative and very helpful. Now, I'd like to pivot to some of our young folks, just by a show of hands. For the young folks that are here, has anyone dealt with or are currently dealing with depression? Okay, so I see a couple hands raised. Yep, I'm raised my hand because I've dealt with it too. Clearly, you're not alone, and I'm sure there's some folks in the audience that raised their hands as well. So let's go ahead and get into our slide presentation on this topic. And if you look at this slide, the first slide, we see a young person with no face, right? They're not themselves. They're not being able to show themselves, which kind of goes into what depression is. So let's go ahead and talk about this, because when it comes to youth depression in the United States, it's a widespread issue and it affects millions of high school and college students. Now, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, approximately 3.2 million adolescents aged 12 to 17 had at least one major depressive episode in 2019, just in that year alone. Now, that number represents over 13% of the total U.S. adolescent population. It's an alarming number. So moving on, when we look at the origins of youth depression, we know that there are biological factors such as genetics and brain chemistry that can play a role in, folks being predisposed to depression. Additionally, environmental factors such as traumatic experiences or family dysfunction and academic stress can all contribute to the development of depressive symptoms. Also, social factors, including peer pressure, bullying, and feelings of isolation, can play a significant role in youth depression. Now, let's move on to our next slide. And let's look at some of the statistics on the impact of youth depression. Now, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, also known as SAMHSA, reports that 30% of college students experience significant symptoms of depression. Also, an alarming 60% of them do not seek help. Now, suicide is the second leading cause of death among young individuals aged 10 to 34, with depression being listed as a major risk factor. And now I'd like to just add in, if you or anyone that you know is in crisis or feels that they may harm themselves, please be sure to text 988 or call the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Now let's move on to our next slide. Because depression can be disabling. The World Health Organization reports that depression is the leading cause of disability among young adults aged 15 to 29 globally. Now, the transition from adolescence to adulthood, coupled with the increased responsibilities, coupled with societal pressures, and a whole host of other things, can contribute to the onset of depression for young folks in this age group. Now, let's move on to our next slide. Now, when it comes to our young LGBTQ family, research shows that LGBTQ youth are at a higher risk of experiencing depression compared to their heterosexual peers due to bullying, discrimination, and many other factors. Now, according to a study published in the Journal of Adolescent Health, LGBTQ youth are more than twice as likely to experience depressive symptoms and engage in self-harming behaviors. Now let's move on to our next slide. So as it relates to depression in marginalized youth, we know that racial stress, discrimination, and systemic inequalities can contribute to higher rates of depression amongst youth of color. Now, SAMHSA highlights that African American, Hispanic, and Native American youth often face unique challenges that can impact their mental health. It's important to provide culturally competent mental health services and create safe spaces for young folks of color to express their experiences and to seek support. Now, moving on, When it comes to social and environmental factors, we know that social media, other social factors, other environmental factors, and other external influences can also contribute to youth depression. The constant comparison, the cyberbullying, as well as the pressure to maintain this idealized online persona can all negatively impact mental health. By creating healthy boundaries, seeking positive online communities, and engaging in offline activities, all of these things can help mitigate the negative effects of social media. So now I'd like to pivot to some of our young folks. And I want to ask you first, Keyshawn, how might comparison, especially when it comes to social media, how might that impact a young person today?
I would say it impacts it a lot. By if you're not really familiar, if you don't have much life experience and you're not familiar with how everybody else is feeling, and you're going through things for the first time and not knowing that other people are going through it too, you might be looking at social media and just seeing everybody else's highlight reels of their entire life. And so you might wake up and immediately see someone doing something that you wish you were doing, someone the same age as you accomplishing things that you think are better than what you're accomplishing, and just in general, people posting their happiest moments of their lives and thinking that they don't have lows at all either. So it can, when you set that as the bar, that's an unattainable bar for anybody to reach, because everybody has highs and lows, and it's not just highs, and social media is just people posting the highs and their highlights. So it's not good to compare your life to the life seen on online.
No, you're absolutely right, Keyshawn. Thanks for that, man, because oftentimes what you see online is not entirely the truth, right? Folks will put up pictures that have been edited, that have been photoshopped, even may have some, AI influence in there. All of that can lead to a person to try to compare themselves or feel less than about themselves if they're trying to compare themselves to someone else that they see on social media, particularly their peers. So what about you, Joel? Let me ask you a little bit of a different question. How might cyberbullying negatively impact a young student?
Cyberbullying can impact a student negatively by, just hearing things that are not so true or maybe questioning their own identity. They could either be bullied for the color of their skin, the way they speak, their ethnic background, their cultural background, depending on what they wear. That can affect them. They might start to, try to hide that side of them, and they won't really show their emotions, show their personality, and overall just shut down and become isolated to where they don't, express their emotions and learn good coping mechanisms.
Very great, man. I appreciate that. That is so, so true. It can be significantly impacted just based off of who they are. So I appreciate that response. And, we're talking about environments, so moving on to our next slide, we want to talk about those environmental factors. And, of course, environments are important. And when we talk about environments, we also must consider the home environment. So my question is, how can families support youth who may be feeling depressed? And I want to ask you, Monica, can you tell me what families can do to support their young folks that are in their care?
Yeah, so families can do frequent check-ins with their kids, just checking like, oh, how was school today? How was your day? Looking for anything that is out of the ordinary. So maybe like if someone decides to skip dinner, maybe the parents can like look and like look at it even deeper and think like, maybe it's not that they're not hungry, maybe it's that something was going wrong with them. And especially if that turns into a pattern where maybe like your child is skipping dinner like every single day of the week, don't just like dismiss it and like actually try to talk to them and ask them like do you need help or what can I do to help you, and then maybe provide them with some resources as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, providing resources, making those check-ins, that's a great, great tip for parents and caregivers. They also can encourage healthy lifestyle habits, right? Encouraging those young folks to engage in regular exercise, encouraging them to eat a balanced diet, and to get their proper rest. All of that can contribute to their overall well-being. Additionally, parents and caregivers can educate themselves about depression and its symptoms so they can better understand and support their children, as well as, look at their own family's mental health history to help guide their research in that. So we've talked a lot about home and, online environments, but what about school? And I want to ask you, Michael, how can schools provide support for students who are dealing with depression?
I feel like a big thing schools can do is just try to educate students on what that might look like, because let's say you're high school and below, you're still you're still getting a feel for yourself, and you might not really know what's going on, what you're feeling and how to really put your feelings into words. So I feel like the schools, they can do their part by educating students and showing them, what some symptoms might look like, provide them with resources, provide them with just real life stories too of people who, have gone through a hardship, or maybe who have went through depression, and show them, being resilient, and show them like, hey, you might be going through this right now, but, the storm will always come to pass. And I know for me, personally, that, that usually helps is when you have, some inspiration or a way to connect with someone who's in that, storm as well, because it just shows you like, you can get out of it.
Yeah, man, that's really great, Michael. Thank you so much for that. You are absolutely correct. Providing the education for students, as well as having some type of peer support system where, other students can share their lived experiences and their stories. That's something that certainly can help a young person who might be dealing and struggling with depression. And in addition to that, schools can also promote mental health awareness. They can implement anti-bullying policies, whether that be in person or online, and just provide those resources that you talked about, for students to really seek the help that they need. And schools can also offer mental health support through counseling services and other educational programs or campaigns that can help to teach those coping skills and build that resilience. So moving along to our next slide, I want to get a little bit of the clinical lens in here. So when we talk about clinical approaches to youth depression, Christian, as our licensed therapist in this conversation, what are some clinical pathways for young folks who may be dealing with depression?
I think the first part, especially when we're talking about a younger age, so anywhere between kindergarten up to high school, like graduating high school, one thing I tell families is that there's no such thing as individual counseling when it comes to people that age. And I say that because someone's living at home, they're dependent on a parent, right? So their structure, their life, whatever's causing depression or contributing to it, is family oriented. It's the family is connected. So that's the first thing I always say. Individual counseling is cool, but it's a whole family approach. So it takes the whole family to kind of help the child or the young adult through that depression, because they're living at home, they're receiving these parents every day. So that's the first thing. The second thing is looking at it from a holistic perspective. So it's not just one thing that has to change. It's more of a lifestyle. So what the type of food that you eat really has an impact on your mental health. The stomach has enzymes. So your gut health is your mental health. So the stomach, the enzymes in your stomach control how your emotions are going to feel, because when you eat the food, these little enzymes in your stomach break it down and it goes right to your brain. So how are you eating? Your exercise. What controls depression is serotonin, which is a chemical in the brain. It's called the happy chemical. So serotonin, a lack of it causes depression. So when you're not getting enough serotonin, you start to become sad. So what are some things you can do to produce serotonin? Laughing, jokes, comedy shows, exercise, running, lifting weights, things like that will help produce serotonin. There's some natural ways to do it. And then now we're talking about the therapy part. So as you notice, you see, I didn't just go straight to therapy. It's a holistic approach. There's more things than that. And spiritually, environmental, drinking water, dehydration can contribute to it. So a lot of things contribute to depression other than just, one simple thing. I just wanted to share that. That's really important to know.
Wow, thanks a lot for that, man. I mean, I like how you broke down the foods that we eat, as well as just drinking water and staying hydrated. All of that is such a huge factor in the ways in which we ourselves, whether we're young or a little bit older, can manage our own health, our own mental wellness. So thanks a lot for that, Christian. And when it comes to those clinical solutions, of course, therapy can be one, as well as medication. But also, kind of going back to something Michael talked about, was support groups, right? Being able to be in space with other people who can kind of talk about their lived experience can certainly give you a little bit more of hope and inspiration that Michael talked about, to kind of, see your way a little bit clearer and, move forward to coming out of that feeling or that fog of depression. Additionally, some other clinical solutions include cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which is a commonly used approach that helps individuals identify and change negative thought patterns. So when you couple the holistic things that you were talking about, in addition with the clinical things, you can certainly be in a place where you're moving towards wellness. Medication, antidepressants also can be prescribed by a healthcare professional to help you manage those symptoms as well. So let's go on to our next slide. Now, this is a topic that's just, completely, we want to be serious about and make sure we're not glossing over. Suicidal ideation and thoughts. Now, depression can be a precursor to suicidal ideation, making it critical to address these progressive mental health conditions promptly. So if someone is experiencing suicidal thoughts, it's essential for them to seek immediate help from a mental health professional or call a helpline such as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline that I mentioned earlier. And I will reiterate, 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Early intervention and appropriate treatment can certainly save lives. And so we want to make sure folks in our audience are aware, as well as our young folks here, that there is someone you can talk to 24 hours a day, regardless, whether you're on the phone, whether you're online, whatever the case may be, there are folks that are there for you that can help be a resource to you. Now let's move on. Now, in addition to the resources that we've talked about, there are also some of those holistic healing solutions, a little bit of what Christian talked about. And some of these might include practicing mindfulness, meditation techniques, all of which can help students cultivate self-awareness, help them to reduce stress, as well as improve their overall mental well-being. There are also apps like Headspace and Calm, which offer guided meditation exercises specifically designed for young folks. In addition to that, there are other types of therapies such as self-expression through art, through music, writing, any other creative outlet that can provide a therapeutic release for young folks. When you engage in activities that allow you to have a sense of self-discovery, a sense of creativity, a sense of self-expression, all of that can help to promote healing and emotional well-being. So I want to take a moment to ask some of our young folks real quick. Let me ask you, Joel, what are some of those, healing modes that you might use, or some of the resources that you might use if you ever are feeling down, or something you can maybe share with someone who is feeling down?
Yeah, so when I do feel down, I like to either, go and relax, go lay down, take some time to myself, or I can go and talk to somebody who I trust, someone who I feel like I can vouch my emotions to. Um, if that doesn't work, maybe just pet my dogs a little bit, go outside, play with them, get some sunlight. Definitely get the blood pumping, do some exercise, either run, do some jumping jacks, play some sports, play basketball, football. Overall, just to stop thinking about what is going on right now and kind of just grounding myself and focusing on, the time as of right now. So
Oh, very good. Very good. Thanks a lot for that. Definitely dogs can help. Definitely sunlight helps, as well as engaging in that physical exercise. When you do engage in physical exercise, you're releasing endorphins, which are like mood boosters for you. So certainly being able to get the blood pumping, moving around, go for a walk or a jog or ride a bike, all of that can help to lift you out of those symptoms, or at least alleviate those symptoms of depression. Let me ask another one of our participants, Keyshawn, what's a way in which you would recommend or suggest a tip to a young person who might be feeling down?
For me, I like to meditate first thing I get up in the morning. I feel like that really sets my tone for the day. And you can actually practice fostering the emotions that you would like to feel. So if you could meditate and visualize and think about yourself feeling happier and having more resolve, your brain throughout the day will go back to that, and it's already primed to have extra mental resilience throughout the day. So I felt as though that has really helped me. I also agree with Joel, just getting outside, being active. I really like to ride my bike. It's something where I can get that energy out, get my anxious energy out, as well as sort of it's kind of quiet and I get to think about the things that are going on in my life. So those are two things I would suggest.
Awesome. Great suggestions, man. So, both of you, thank you very much for that. And I just want to encourage young folks to, participate in activities that you enjoy. Keyshawn just talked about he really enjoys riding his bike, clears his head, gets a change of scenery, and also gets the blood pumping. So other sport activities, maybe dancing, he mentioned meditation, yoga is also an option. All of these different things can have a positive impact on your mental health. So just want to make sure that you're doing something that you like to do, and make sure that it'll help lift you out of those feelings of depression. I know also listening to music is another huge way that folks can alleviate some of the depression that they're feeling. Or for those who are creative, writing music or making beats or creating songs or creating music or playing an instrument, all of these types of modes of creativity are certainly going to help you along your path. So let's move along to our next slide. Now, let's talk about some strength-based solutions. Now, young people should surround themselves with supportive friends, supportive family members, as well as mentors who lift up and validate their experiences towards fostering a sense of belonging and resilience. Basically, all that to say, find your people. You got people. You have people who have your back. You have people who have your best interests at heart, and you just got to find them. And you never know, they might be right under your nose, right next to you, wanting to support you and go on that bike ride with you or do some of those activities that we talked about. When you find your people, you're able to gain strength that can help you along your journey. Now, let's move along to our next slide. Now, students can set achievable goals and celebrate their accomplishments to boost self-esteem and provide a sense of purpose. Encouraging them to focus on their strengths and talents can empower them to really just find ways to overcome their challenges. And these are all things that can certainly help you along your journey, really by setting goals and celebrating your accomplishments, thinking about some of the things that you've overcome, some of the things that you've achieved, can certainly help you to remember and reflect on, some of those times where you were happy. So, right now, I kind of want to pivot and ask some of our young folks really quickly, Monica, what is one of the things that you're proud of? What is one of your accomplishments that you can look back and say that you're excited or that you're proud of?
I would say even just getting accepted into a UC was like a big accomplishment for me. When I was in high school and I did my college applications, I was very like like doubtful in myself. Looking back, I don't know why I thought negatively that way, but I think it was a big accomplishment that I got into every single school that I had applied to, and then I was recognized for it. And then now that I'm here, I'm hoping like my next accomplishment is graduating and then being the first person in my family to be a college graduate.
See, that's a huge accomplishment. First generation college student at the UC, holding it down. Much props to you. How about you, Michael? Talk to us about one of your accomplishments.
I feel like an accomplishment that I'm real proud of is just it's kind of tied into Monica, being the first in your family to go to college and to, just go through that entire experience, basically with limited help because there's not much people who I know who have been to college. And it's just a real big accomplishment because, I have 3 younger sisters, so I get to, show them what's possible and, just trying my best every day to be, just a great role model and show them like, if you put in the work, this what can come out of life. These are the fruits that you can enjoy. So that's a real big, that's something I'm real proud of is just being, that role model and showing them like, this is possible and you can do it.
Wow. Thanks a lot for that, Michael. And you certainly are an outstanding role model. Much props to you as well. I mean, look, folks, we've just heard from our youth who've given us some great tips to boost your self-esteem. Also, they've given us some of their accomplishments. And I like to try to wrap up on a good note, looking at some of the things that they're proud of. So with that, I'd like to thank each of you personally. Thank you, Keyshawn. I'd like to thank you, Joel. Thank you, Monica. And thank you, Michael, for your contributions today. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to my brother, Mr. Christian Jacobs, for always coming in with that insider analysis, that clinical lens to help us see our way through these conversations. Thank you so much, Christian. And I'd like to also give a huge thank you to you, our audience, for joining Into the Classroom, which is a production of Mental Health California. Please be sure to visit us at mentalhealthca.org. Also, if you'd like to access health and mental wellness topics for boys and men of color, please visit our signature initiative at brotherbewell.com. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our blog. And lastly, but certainly not least, I'd like to give a huge thank you to our sponsor, Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative, which promotes access to mental health support. You can learn all about their program at bluesky.blueshieldca.com. With that, I'm your host, Conrad Crump, also known as Coach Crump. And until next time, take good care of yourselves.